Raw emotion, quiet hunger, intimacy you can feel. This is where stories breathe between shadows and whispers, where every glance lingers, every breath matters, and tension hums just beneath the surface. Here we explore moments that blur the line between want and need. Each video invites you into a world of slow-burning desire, layered connections, and choices that leave you breathless. If you crave sensual storytelling with depth, emotion wrapped in heat, and narratives that pull you in and don't let go, you've just found your place. If you held your breath when she walked back in, if you wondered what you'd do when it was your turn to be touched. Chosen watch, then don't just watch, join the story. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, let yourself feel everything, because here we don't shy away from tension, we lean into it. Thank you for being here. The next story is already waiting. I reached for the hem of my dress and pulled it up and over my head in one clean motion. No words, just silence, breath, and 3 sets of eyes watching me like they'd never seen me before. I didn't rush, I didn't smile. I let the stillness do the work. Then I walked toward Lucas, slow and steady, letting the moment stretch with every step. And when I reached him, I leaned in and kissed him slow, certain like I already knew none of them would stop me. Before we dive in, take a quick second to like this video and hit subscribe. It helps the channel grow, reach more viewers, and keeps these stories coming every day. Thanks for being here. Now, let's begin. Lucas had both hands locked at my hips, moving with a kind of focus that erased everything else. My cheek pressed into the pillow, breath catching as he kept his pace steady and hard. It wasn't gentle, it was fast, determined, like he couldn't stop even if he tried. I moved with him instinctively, fingers curled tight in the sheets. Heat surged fast, each motion building higher. A cry slipped out sharper than I meant, and he didn't slow. His grip shifted, pulling me upright onto my knees, one arm sliding around my waist to keep me steady. I reached back, needing contact, and he responded with a low, rough sound that hit somewhere deep in my chest. His pace faltered just briefly, then he leaned back into me again, slower now, more controlled. His breath hitched as everything tightened, chest against my back, the moment hitting us both. I sank forward, shaking, skin flushed and nerves sparking. We stayed like that for a while, quiet, close, neither of us moving much. Then he let go, dropping beside me on the bed. I was still catching my breath when he finally spoke. "This may be a mistake," he said. I turned my head, lips brushing the pillow. "You regret it?" He gave a quiet laugh. "Number. But I think my dad or Tyler might know something." I looked over. "Why?" "They've been acting strange. Tyler asked if I've been disappearing. My dad keeps giving me this look, like he's already figured it out." I rolled onto my back, letting the sheet slip down to my waist. "So they're suspicious?" He hesitated. "You're not worried?" I stretched, body still humming. "No," I said, smiling. "Isn't it more exciting this way?" The knock hit hard, 3 sharp raps that made me jump. It was early. I hadn't even finished brewing coffee, just a soft t-shirt and sleep still in my eyes. I opened the door halfway. Nathan stood there, Lucas's father, expression calm, eyes steady like he already knew. "Morning," he said. I pulled the door wider, keeping my face neutral. "Didn't expect you." He stepped inside without waiting, gaze moving through the room. He didn't sit, just turned to face me. "I thought it was time we talked." I folded my arms. "About you and Lucas." I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "You think I haven't noticed the way he looks at you, the way he walks out of here like he hasn't slept in days?" I didn't flinch. "Maybe he hasn't." Nathan stared for a beat. "I'm not judging, but don't insult me by pretending it's nothing. I never said it was." He looked at me again, slower this time. "You really don't care how this looks, do you?" I stepped in close enough for him to feel it. "I care," I said, "just not in the way you expect." His gaze dropped, lingering. The shirt didn't hide much, and I didn't try to adjust it. I let the silence work. Then I reached for his hand lightly and let it hover just above my leg, close but not touching. "I know you've been watching," I said. "No need to pretend." His fingers twitched. "You could have come earlier," I whispered. "Why today?" No answer. I leaned in, close enough for warmth to pass between us. "Tell me, Nathan, are you here to stop this?" I tilted my head, brushing past his cheek. "Or are you just tired of being left out?" Then I kissed him slow and sure, and he didn't pull away. Nathan didn't say a word after the kiss. His eyes flicked down, then back up. Something in him shifted. A moment later, one hand slid to my waist, the other moved behind my neck, pulling me in again. This time the kiss deep and firm, certain, without a trace of hesitation. He moved with weight, with purpose. When he backed me toward the couch, I didn't resist. When he tugged my shirt higher, I raised my arms without breaking eye contact. When his hands touched bare skin, I leaned into it like I'd been waiting. I pushed him gently onto the cushions and climbed into his lap, settling with slow confidence. His breath caught as I moved against him, steady and bold. I rolled my hips once, just enough to make him tense beneath me. "Still think this is a bad idea?" I whispered. He didn't answer. I moved again, slower, more deliberate. He responded in kinds, hands firm at my sides, holding me in place while we moved in sync. He didn't rush, he let it build. Every shift brought him closer to losing control. I leaned in, lips brushing his ear, then stopped pretending. His hands moved across my back and down again. Exploring carefully, the air thickened, the pull between us tightening. I pressed in again, harder this time, and he exhaled sharp through his nose, head tipping back, chest heaving. And just when I felt him falter, I pulled away. I climbed off him slowly, grabbing my shirt from the floor and slipping it back on like nothing had happened. He sat there, catching his breath, unsure what came next. "You should come to dinner tonight," I said casually. Nathan blinked. "Dinner?" I glanced back over my shoulder. "You, Lucas, and Tyler." His expression changed completely. I poured a glass of water and took a sip. "I'll handle the cooking," I said. "You just come hungry." He didn't speak, just stood there for a beat, stunned, lips parted, then turned and walked out without a word. The knock came just after 6, one sharp rap, then 2 slower ones, like someone couldn't decide whether to be polite or confident. Nathan hadn't said a word when he left earlier, but I knew they'd come, all 3 of them. I opened the door. Nathan was in front, calm as ever. Lucas stood behind him, trying not to meet my eye. Tyler lingered a step back, shifting from foot to foot like he still had time to run. I smiled. Right on time. They stepped inside quietly, each one more unsure than the last. I wore something light, short, strapless, and smooth enough to catch the light when I moved. Nothing underneath, no apologies, just dinner on the stove and wine already poured. The table was set, music low, lights softer than usual. I played the perfect host, hugging them one by one like nothing was strange, like I hadn't had my legs across Nathan's this morning. I sat between Nathan and Lucas, Tyler across from me, shoulders tense, eyes darting. He kept trying not to look. He wasn't doing a great job. Under the table, I let my leg press lightly against Nathan's. When he didn't react, I pressed in again, this time slower. His hand twitched once. That was all. I asked Lucas about his week, brushing his arm as he answered. Turned to Tyler and asked if he was still seeing that girl from last summer. He blinked, stammered, shook his head, and nodded like it was nothing, but my fingers were already drifting along Nathan's leg. Every minute at that table wound tighter. My voice dropped lower. My smile lingered longer. I topped off their glasses without asking. Lucas kept glancing at my legs. Tyler kept shifting in his seat. Nathan stayed perfectly still, but I could feel the shift in him with every breath. When dinner was done, I stood to clear the plates. "Don't move," I said softly. "I'll be right back." I returned slower than before. The empty plates left forgotten in the kitchen. All 3 were still seated, quiet, alert, watching me like they weren't sure if this was still a meal or something else entirely. I stopped beside the table, met Nathan's gaze, then Lucas's, then Tyler's. Then I reached for the hem of my dress and pulled it up and over my head in one clean motion. No words, just quiet and breath and silence. All 3 of them froze. Lucas's eyes widened. Tyler looked like he forgot how to breathe, and Nathan, he clenched his jaw, fists curling tight on his thighs. I walked toward Lucas, slow and steady, letting the moment stretch with every step. Then I leaned in and kissed him, slow, certain, claiming. Lucas's hands were already at my hips when I settled into his lap, his breath warming the side of my neck as I eased down slowly. I loosened his clothing enough to clearly feel him beneath me, the quiet rustle of fabric filling the silence. The moment I settled in place, his grip tightened, his fingers pressing at my waist, his head falling back with a sharp breath. I moved against him, steady and focused, letting each motion build. He met every shift with urgent energy, his lips brushing my shoulder, chest rising fast against my back. "Don't hold back," I whispered softly. "Let yourself go," and he gave in. His hand slid along my sides, holding me closer with every roll of my hips. The couch creaked beneath us, our bodies moving in rhythm, tension growing. I could feel how close he was, his legs tensing, his breathing quickening. But I didn't slow down. Instead, I turned my head. "Nathan," I said, low and clear. He'd been watching the whole time, still fully dressed, jaw set, gaze steady. The moment I reached for him, he stepped forward. I unfastened his belt slowly, sliding the fabric lower, eyes locked steadily on his. He stepped free with calm control, though the tightness in his expression gave him away. Still moving over Lucas, I leaned forward slightly and brought Nathan closer. His hand rested lightly at the back of my head as I leaned in, pressing soft kisses against him, teasing gently. One hand braced on Lucas's chest, the other resting on Nathan's hip. The space filled with breath and movement, all of it thick with rising tension. I pulled back slightly. "Stay close," I murmured. Then I looked to the one who hadn't moved, Tyler, still fully dressed, still sitting on the edge of the couch like he wasn't sure what to do. I slid off Lucas, heat still thrumming through me, and crossed the room slowly. Tyler didn't react until I kissed him, gentle, coaxing. That's when he finally exhaled. I slipped his shirt off and watched his chest rise in uneven waves. Then I knelt, unfastening his pants with care before taking his hand in mine. He followed quietly as I guided him to sit. I lowered to my knees in front of him, breath steady, and leaned in close, pressing a slow kiss against his hip before gently teasing further. His whole body jolted, hands tightening at his sides, legs drawn tight. I kept one hand on his thigh, the other behind me for balance. Nathan returned behind me, quiet, steady. His hands rested at my waist, and then he moved close, his body pressed carefully against mine. I gasped softly against Tyler, adjusting my balance as I settled into the new rhythm. Nathan anchored me from behind, each motion slow and measured. I matched it as I continued with Tyler, letting the weight of the moment wrap around all three of us. After a moment, I pulled back and turned. Tyler sat wide-eyed, his breath shaky. I climbed into his lap and eased down slowly, adjusting until I was fully settled. He gasped, unsure, his hands hovering before finding my waist. I reached back and Nathan joined again, moving closely behind me. I arched to meet them both, finding a new rhythm as they moved in sync. Then I reached out. Lucas was kneeling nearby, watching. I extended a hand and he stepped closer. I wrapped my fingers around him, moving my hand gently, slowly, deliberately. His breath stuttered as he leaned forward, kissing the side of my neck, his hands brushing my thighs. I wasn't done. I rose and took Lucas's hand, guiding him to lie on the floor. Then I straddled him, facing away, and settled myself gently into place. I paused to adjust. Settling into motion, Nathan was still watching. I beckoned him with a look. He stepped forward, positioned himself carefully, and moved close in front, joining our rhythm, one hand on my hip, the other brushing my cheek. I braced against his chest as I rocked between them, Lucas beneath me, Nathan above, each movement sending heat spiraling higher. Then I turned to Tyler, still standing, still watching. "Come here," I said softly. He stepped forward. I reached for him, welcomed him gently while my body stayed in motion, Lucas moving below, Nathan pressing above, and Tyler trembling in my hands. Tyler was the first to shudder deeply, breath quickening as tension released. I held him until he was finished, then slowly let him go and returned my focus to Nathan, my hands pressing against his chest as the final wave began to rise. Lucas's grip tightened, his body pressing close as tension surged until he finally tensed sharply. Breath quickening, Nathan followed moments later, his arms wrapped around me, his body shuddering against mine. And I followed, my back arched, breath scattered, the heat surging, tension breaking in waves through me as the moment overwhelmed me. I didn't move, just stayed there, wrapped in Nathan's arms, Lucas's chest beneath me, and Tyler's hands still resting beside mine. Breathless, held exactly where I wanted to be. So if you were sitting at that table when she walked back in, how would you have handled it? Would you wait for her to come to you, or take the lead? Tell me exactly what you'd do. I'll be reading every reply. And if you enjoyed this story, hit like, tap subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. Thanks for watching.